All right. So today you guys are going to take your measurements and bring them into Rhino and create a floor plan. We're going to do a 2D floor plan, just two-dimensional first. And then maybe later on we'll consider creating a 3D model of it, but really the goal will be to create a two-dimensional floor plan. We can print it out to scale on 17 by 11, and then we can have that as reference so when we start to design our cash wrap, we have that for reference. So I'm going to take some of the measurements from Albert's model. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to start a new file, file new. You want to make sure you start off with the right template, right? So do you guys remember the difference between large and small object templates? Which one should I choose? Large objects or small objects? Any ideas? Small? Okay. So between all of these choices, the first thing we want to decide is whether we're doing a large object or a small object. Anything bigger than a pickup truck is considered a large object. So with that in mind, do we want to do small objects or large objects? Large objects, that's right. Now between large objects, which one do we want to choose? There's still about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 choices. So how do we narrow it down? Which one do you think we should choose?
Meters.
Meters.
Oh, inch.
Inch.
Feet.
Okay. Inches, feet. So we should choose inches, feet, and inches, right? So of all the large object templates, we're not going to use metric, right? Because here in America we don't like metric, right? So we're going to go with our imperial units. And then between imperial units we have feet, feet and inches, feet, inches, feet and inches, and inches. So of those 4 choices, we need to choose which one is our primary unit. So when we're typing in numbers and we say a value of 5, do we want to say a value of 5 inches, or would we rather say a value of 5 feet? 5 feet. So we want it, I prefer 5, I'd prefer inches. You can model it whatever you want, but I prefer inches. And the reason for that is when I say something like, what's a good example? Okay, let's say 17 inches, right? How do you type in 17 inches when you're using inches as your primary unit? 17, right, and enter. Or 17 in quotation mark, enter. Now, how would I do 17 inches using feet? (17 divided by 12)? Yeah, technically. Or you would write 1 foot, so 1 apostrophe 5 quotation mark, okay, for 17 inches. Okay, so it takes a little longer, and the more you're doing that, the longer this is going to take. So inches, feet, and inches is just my preference, but you can use whatever you want. So inches, and then we still have 2 templates that say inches, right? I have one that says feet and inches, and I have one that just says inches. So of those, how can I help you now?
You need to use your printer.
Okay.
Two of these are not working for whatever reason now.
Okay. Should I just pause my lecture, or?
No, they can sneak around and print over there. It'll be fine.
I'd really rather not. Yeah. I mean, you can come over here, but. Jeez. Anyways. So we're going to do large objects, inches, feet and inches. So feet and inches describes the display unit. When we're drawing lines, it'll display numbers just down here. And feet and inches is what we're going to want to see. So we're going to hit large objects, inches, feet and inches. Okay. So now if I go to, I'm going to start in my top viewport. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a polyline. Okay. When I use the polyline command, I can create multiple lines, or I can just make one line. Same command. So I'm going to start my polyline at 0, and using ortho, I'm going to zoom out, and I'm just going to make a big, long, straight vertical line. Down here I can see my display units. It says 19 foot 6.5 inches right here. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out. All right, I'm just going to make a super extra long straight line going up, and that's it. And just click once and hit enter. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to offset that line a distance, right? So if we're looking at the Coast Collective floor plan, and we have the glass windows and doors down here, and we have the back of the room over here, and we'll have the cash wrap area wall right here, and then the other wall over here. Okay. So this measurement, what do you guys have for this measurement from here to there? 21 feet, okay. 21? 21 and 1/16 of an inch. Okay. So I'm going to offset that. So I'm going to use the offset command. I'm going to take this vertical line and I'm going to offset it 21 feet. Okay. So it said offset, and now the command line, it says select curve to offset. I'm going to select this curve. Okay. And then for distance, where it says D for distance, I'm going to hit D, hit enter, and then I'm going to type in 21 feet. Okay. And I want the 21 feet to go that way to the right. So I just stay within this quadrant over here. So I've got a vertical line. I'm going to offset it 21 feet. And the last thing I want to do is just click. You want to click in the direction that it needs to go in. So just click like that. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is another polyline. And I'm just going to connect this endpoint and this endpoint. Hit enter. What do you guys have as a measurement going north and south? Say it one more time. 30 feet, 2 3/8 of an inch. Okay. Yeah, I've got 2.5. So I'm going to take this line. I'm going to say offset. I'm going to select my curve to offset, and then I'm going to type in D for distance, and I'm going to type in 30 apostrophe 2 dash 1 / inches. Okay. And then I'm going to click in that direction, and just like that, that's the outline of the interior of my floor plan. The next thing I want to do is clean up these corners. So I'm going to use, there's several different ways you can do this. I'll show you two. One is using the fillet command. Okay, so fillet will take two lines and it'll give you a corner condition, and you can give that corner a radius. You can also give that corner a radius of 0 degrees, or a radius of 0, and that'll produce a sharp 90-degree corner. So if I say fillet and I say radius 0, I hit enter, and then I select my first curve to fillet, and then I select my second curve to fillet, and that cleans that up. Okay. The other way I can do it is using the trim command. So with trim, you can select your cutting objects, which in this case I'll select both of these lines, and I'll press enter when I'm done. And then I'm going to select the object to trim, which is going to be this little guy here, and then press enter when I'm done. Okay, so two different ways of cleaning up that corner. Now we're going to give this a little bit of thickness. So since we don't exactly know the thickness of these walls, we're just going to assume. So if I look at Albert's model, he went about 7 inches. We can guess something like 6 inches, although it's probably way thicker than that. So I'm going to use the offset command, offset. The distance, I can type in D for distance, is going to be 6 inches. So 6, enter. And I'm going to take this one, offset it outwards, and I'm going to repeat that command. Do this curve and offset it outwards. Repeat that command and offset this one outwards. Okay. And I'm going to take this one and offset it this way. Okay. Now I got to go in and clean up all of these joints. All right. The reason why I offset it 6 inches outwards is I know these dimensions here, right? This one I measured. This one I measured. I don't want to go 6 inches inwards, right? 6 inches inwards, because then that reduces it by a whole foot in either direction. So I'm going to clean this up. Let's use fillet with a radius of 0. I'm going to click here and there. I'm going to repeat that command. There and there. And there and there. The next part is there is a part of a column all the way in the top right near the fitting room. And so for that one, I'm going to draw a polyline. And actually, I'm not going to draw a polyline. I'm just going to use offset. I'm going to select that curve to offset. And then I'm going to type in D for distance. And I'm going to enter 11-1 / quotation mark, enter. So 11¼ of an inch. And then the width of the column itself, I've got it down as 2 foot 4¼ So I'm going to do offset. And I'm going to grab this line. And I'm going to do D for distance, 2 foot 4 -1 / 4 quotation mark, just like that. And then I'm going to do another offset. I'm going to grab this line, and I'm going to do 7¼ just like that. Okay, it's going to look like that. And then I'm going to take all of these lines and use the trim command. And I'm going to trim what I don't need away. I can join these two. I can do that if I wanted to. Or I could have left it separate. It doesn't really matter. Okay, and that's what that looks like. And then let's take a look at where the windows are. So it looks like we have a 6 foot wide opening. So I'm going to go ahead and start modeling that part. So to do that, I'm going to use the polyline command. I'm going to click right over here in this inside corner and go straight down. I'm going to do an offset. And I'm going to offset 7 foot 6 inches. I'm going to take this line, offset it to the right, and then I'm going to offset it 6 feet. And then if I offset this little line, 7 foot 6, it should line up right here. Okay, so this now represents where the doors are. And then to draw the doors, I'm going to type in the polyline command. And I'm going to start right here. Actually, let's do the rectangle command. I'm going to hit escape. I like to use the 3-point rectangle when I make my rectangles, and I want to represent the doors. So I'm going to start right here. I know each door is 3 foot wide. So I'm going to type in 3 feet because it's a 6 foot wide double door, so each door is 3 feet. And then I'm going to go about this way, just about maybe 1.5 inches. Just kind of guessing on that one. And then click that way. I want to find my midpoint between these two lines. So I'm going to offset one of them a distance of 3 feet, and that helps me find my center. And then I'm going to use the arc command to draw the door swing of my door. So I'm going to use arc, start, end, point on arc, or let's do start, end, direction at start. Let's try this one. So I'm going to click on this one, and I'm going to click on that one, and then I'm going to move my cursor upwards just like that, and that's what it should look like. To do the other door, I'm going to use the mirror command. I'm going to select the objects that I want to mirror. That's going to be these two things. Press enter when I'm done. The start of my mirror plane. My mirror plane is the axis of symmetry, so I want to define it. I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to click there, and that means all of this will be reflected upon that line, right? So I'm going to say here and there. Now I've got 2 doors. So there's my floor plan so far. And then I want to go through and just add in all of my mullions, or all of the framing around the glass. So let's give it about maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches. I'm going to do offset, distance of 2 inches. I'm going to grab this curve and go that way, and do this curve and go that way. I need to put another one right here in the middle as well. So I'm going to offset this one this way. And then to find the middle of these two, I know that my distance from here to here is 7 foot 6 inches. You can use the dim command to figure that out. So what's halfway of 7 foot 6? Huh? 3 foot what? 8? I don't think so. What's half of 6 inches? 3 inches. What's half of 7 feet? Yeah, or 3 foot 6. So 3 foot 6 plus 3 is 3 foot 9. Super close. So I'm going to offset. Oops. Offset a distance of 3 foot 9 inches. And that's going to be either this one or the other one. And that's my midpoint. And then I want to offset, since I want to go on either side, if this is my center line, I'm going to offset 1 inch this time, this way, and I'm going to offset 1 inch this way, and I'm going to delete that. Now I want to put my glass in here, so I'm going to come in with my polyline, find my midpoint, and I'll represent my glass with like maybe 1/2 inch thickness of glass. So I'm going to say offset, and I'm going to offset 1/4 inch upwards and 1/4 inch downwards, and then I'll get rid of this line. I'll select both of these lines, copy, and I'll copy it from here to here. Okay, I did all that work for this side. Now all I have to do is mirror it. So I'm going to type in mirror. I'm going to select all of these things that I want to mirror. I don't need to mirror this one here because I already have it on this side. So I'm going to hit enter, and the mirror plane is here. So now I just did double the work with one fall swoop. So there's my glass. And now I can also take any dimensions of furniture that I have. This was a super simple floor plan. Looks like we do have a column somewhere in this floor plan. Looks like an 8-inch by 8-inch column. So the location of the column, if I type in offset, distance is going to be 9 foot 7 inches. I'm going to grab this line here and offset it upwards, and then I'm going to offset a distance of 8 inches, and I'll grab this line and offset it upwards, and then I'm going to take this line over here, offset it, distance of 1 foot 11, and then offset again a distance of 8 inches, and then I'm going to come in and trim all of these excess lines, and that just represents that little column that has got the orange grove on it. And then everything else in that space is pretty much loose. It's just furniture. So if you guys have some of those dimensions of the furniture, you're going to want to add that in as well. But this is kind of the main core of what we need. The next thing we want to do is we want to put these things onto layers, and then we want to create floor plans from it. The reason why we want to use layers is because we want to control the line weights, how heavy these lines show up. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you guys about this little feature here. This is layouts. There's a little plus button right here next to perspective, top, front, right, plus. For all you architecture majors, that's going to be really important for you guys to start using this right away, because you can start drafting your floor plan in Rhino to layouts, and it's going to come out pretty good. So we'll do a new layout. Okay. And now I want to choose what size paper I want to plot this to. If this was a bigger building, we might use 36 by 24 or 42 by 30 or 18 by 12. We're going to use 17 by 11. So for size, I'm going to choose tabloid. I want to go landscape, which means it's going to be wider than it is tall. And I'm going to change the name to floor plan. We're going to hit OK. And so here it is. This is a 17 by 11 piece of paper, just like that piece of paper right there under your notebook. That one on the table. Sure, yeah, that one too. That's 17 by 11. Okay, this is a digital representation of it. And what Rhino is doing is it brought that drawing in and it zoomed into that everything in that top view. But what we want to do is we want to control exactly how big that thing is. Because we're architects, we want to use an architectural scale. So we're going to pick a scale that makes the most sense. If I look at my dimensions, looks like 30 foot 2.5 is our longest dimension. So I need to figure out if I'm going to be using a 1/4 of an inch scale or 1/2 of an inch scale. I might need to rotate this so that way it fits better on the paper. So at 30 foot to, let's just say 30 feet, if I'm using a 1/4 inch scale, how big is the 30 foot line at a 1/4 inch scale? So for every 1 foot is a 1/4 of an inch. Seven something, right? So about 7 inches. This is a 17 by 11 sheet of paper, so we'd still have 4 inches left over. What if this was half-inch scale? 30 feet, every foot is equal to half of an inch. About something like 15 inches. So I know that's not going to fit. So let's just keep it at quarter of an inch. 17, well, unless I turned it sideways, I guess, right? 15 inches. Yeah. Okay. Let's do that. Let's go back to top view. I'm going to take my whole entire drawing and I'm going to rotate it. Actually, I'm not going to rotate that. I'm going to rotate this one. I don't know if it'll actually flip. No, it doesn't. Let's do rotate view. And angle, rotation angle we'll say is 90. Enter, enter. That didn't do anything. Let's do rotate view. Click and drag to rotate. Nope, that's not what I want. Let's just rotate it from here. So if I select everything, and I'm going to say rotate, I'll rotate it from here to there. And I'm going to go this way, and then I'm going to move it from here to 0. Now if I go back to this one, it's been rotated. I want to center it in this viewport, so I'm going to select all of it. You're going to type in ZS to zoom into what you have selected. And now that we have it centered, all we need to do is dictate the correct architectural scale. So here under properties, right here for scale, in the layout I want to say that every half an inch is equal to 1 foot. Okay. Oh, that doesn't fit actually, because my 21 foot width. So let's undo this. Let's just use quarter inch. So for scale and layout, I'm going to say 0.25 inches is equal to 12 inches. And then there's my floor plan. You want to make sure you lock. There's a lock button right there on the top. Just going to hit lock, so that way when I pan or when I select or when I orbit, it's not going to zoom in and out on this drawing. And then you want to double click outside of it. Okay, so to edit this whole floor plan, I need to double click inside of this viewport. Now I can actually select certain things just like that. If I double click it, now I'm outside of that viewport, and now I'm back on my layout view. And then from here, you're going to right click on floor plan, you're going to click on print preview. With print preview on, this is going to show you what this is going to look like when you go to print this out. So I'll show you what that means. If I go to layers, currently everything's been drawn on the default layer. So here under line types, if I were to change that from continuous to border, you'll notice how each of these lines now turn into this type of line type, which I don't want. I'm going to go back to continuous. But if you scroll to the right, where it says print width, you can change that to, let's say 2 millimeters. That's what that looks like. Okay, I'm going to set it back to default. And what we're going to do is we're going to say I want all of my walls and that column and all of those little mullions I want that to be on one layer. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go through and select all of those lines. And this one here, and these ones here, and here, and there, and there. I'm going to select all of those lines. Remember, if you're making a selection window and you're going from left to right, just like this, you'll only select the things that you're fully encompassing. So if I go left to right, it'll select just those two lines, right? It's not going to select the other lines that are going the other way. But if I make the same shape going right to left, it's going to select everything. Okay, that's super important. Because then that allows you to do things like quickly select all of these things. So I'm going to hold Shift, I'm going to select that, and this, all that, all that, and all that. That was done by going left to right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this to another layer, and I'm going to put it on layer number 1. So I'm going to right click, change object layer, and then the print width, I'm going to change it to, let's try 0.3. Okay. So you can see it's a little thicker. It's also taking on the red color, because that's what the layer color is. You have your display color in this column. This is your print color. So when you're viewing your 2D and 3D model, you can view it in a very specific color, but you can also print it out at a different color. You don't have to use the same color. So instead of red for print color, I'm going to say black. Now that's going to change to black. I need to get this little line in there as well. And these little lines here as well. So I'm going to do some editing. So if I double click inside of this viewport, I'm going to select this line and that line, and I'm going to use the command split. So I'm going to type in split, and now it's asking me for my cutting objects. So I want to select this line and this line, these lines, those lines, these lines here, and these as well, and hit enter. Now it says two curves are split into 24 pieces. So now I can come in and say these lines should all be on this layer, and these lines should be on that layer. These lines, and I can hold Shift and select those lines and all of these lines, put it on this layer, change object layer. I'm going to call this, I'm going to call it heavy. Usually we have heavy line weights, medium, and thin, sometimes extra thin. And then let's do a layer for annotations. I'm going to move thin up a couple layers and medium up a couple layers. So now anything on this reddish layer is heavy. So when I do this and zoom in, you can see some difference in line weight. And now let's also put this one here on heavy. I'm going to change object layer. Now if I wanted to do a hatch or a poche, I can also come in and let's do another layer. We'll call it hatch. Let's make that layer current. and then we'll use the hatch command. We're going to select all of these curves, press enter. Okay, and it's going to look for any closed boundaries, but I can see it's missing some, and it's added the doors as a hatch, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to click on boundary, and it's going to allow me to dictate what to poche. So I'm going to say this area, that area, this piece, that piece, this one here, here, there, and here. Okay, I don't want to poche my doors. Okay, so I'm going to say enter, and I can choose any one of these hatches here, but I'm going to go with solid. I'm going to hit OK. Okay, now it's starting to look like a floor plan. For the print color for this hatch, I'm going to choose like a dark gray. Okay. Now let's go to our annotations layer, and I'm going to give it like a reddish color, and I'm going to type in dim for dimension, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to click here and right here, and then bring it up just like this. Let's do that command again over here. Okay. Maybe we want to do it in here. Maybe this piece here. Maybe right here. And then I'm going to add in some text. So I'm going to type in text, and I want to give this drawing a name. So I'm going to call it, in all caps, Coast Collective Floor Plan. If I use this style, it's going to be 1/8 of an inch tall. And let's go ahead and see what that looks like. It's about that big. That's nice. I'll put it right here, and then I'll bring it down just a little bit. If I want to edit that text after I've already written it, I can select it and go to properties. Let's make it bold. Let's make it underlined. Okay. I'm going to take that text and I'm going to use the copy command. So select objects to copy. I'm going to hit that, press enter. I've got ortho on, so I'm going to move from here to about here, press enter. And then for this one, I'm going to call this, I'm going to take off the bold and the underline, and I'm going to say scale 1/4 of an inch is equal to 1 foot 0 inches. Okay. Any notes that I want to type out, I can type that out here and include those notes. See how big this is. This is 7.8 inches by 5.5 inches. We could probably actually get away with a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So I'm going to right click floor plan, go to layout properties, and let's change it from tabloid to letter and hit OK. And then I'm just going to move it into place. I can actually take these control points. So if I wanted to downsize the actual viewport, I just need to find the viewport, which is like that. Take these control points, move it down, snap to my perpendicular point, take these control points, move it in there, take these ones, move this in here, take these ones and move them in here. I'm going to unlock this just so I can center all of this. Select all that, type in ZS. Now I need to change my scale again from, make it 0.25 inches is equal to 12 inches, and then lock it. And now my floor plan is again centered. Now I'll take my text and I'll move it up just about there. And then I'll do a save. It's file, save as. I'll save this under 201 assignments 250630. This will be assignment. Let's see, what assignment are we on? 11, right? Yeah, we'll make this assignment 11. Coast Collective Floor Plan, TJC, save. You're going to save your Rhino model. And the last thing to do is to print this out. So I can go to File and Print. Okay. I want to make sure to choose my PDF printer because I want to make a PDF of this. I'm going to choose the right paper size, letter. I'm going to choose the correct orientation, which should be landscape. And I want to make sure that my scale is set to 1:1. I don't want it to zoom to fit or anything else, 1:1 scale, because this is a 1/4 of an inch is equal to a foot drawing, and I don't want it to be scaled up anymore or scaled down anymore. Otherwise it will not be a 1/4 inch is equal to a foot drawing. And I'll hit print. It's going to ask me where to save it. Let's put it right here under assignments. Use the same file name. It'll be a PDF. Hit save. If you're using Adobe PDF, usually it'll show you right here. Okay, so now I'm gonna print this to a printer. So see if I can print it out to this printer here. Again, 100% scale. You don't want this thing to scale to fit at all. So I'm going to say actual size, 11 by 8.5, and let's hit print. Looks pretty good as a PDF. Looks nice and clean. Although I'm noticing my dimensions are a little off. So I need to go back and fix that. So let's take, thank you, that's pretty nice. So unfortunately, because I scaled it, moved it and everything, all these dimensions are not connecting where they need to be. So you can either, they probably just need to all be moved. So if I select all of them and move it and find their intersection point and put them here, that's exactly where it needs to be. If you can't figure that out, just do it all over again. Delete those dimensions and do the dimension command again. So let's print that. Got to close the other one first. Okay, that looks better. Let's do print, actual size. All right, any questions? Yes. Layer wise, you said? Yeah. So if I go back to my layers, this is what it looks like. Default layer is always going to be there. I like to keep the default layer, and I try not to use it. I only use it as a place for, like, you know, temporarily having things until I finally organize it. Thank you. That is good. Okay, and then the thin, medium, heavy, extra thin. So if I were to draw some furniture, you know, which is what I want you guys to do, you should have some measurements of some of the existing furniture that's already there. Bring it in here, right? So if first of all, I want these layers to be black. So over here for print color, I want them to be black. The display color doesn't have to be black. It's kind of nice to have a brightly lit display color. So that way I can visibly see when I'm just here in top view exactly what layer that thing is going to be on. And it tells me, oh, it's on the medium layer or the heavy layer or extra thin layer. So for thin, let's just choose 0.13. For medium, let's work our way up to 0.25. We've got heavy. Let's move extra thin up. And let's call it hairline. And let's also give it a dark gray instead of a black. My annotations are just default. My hatch is a dark gray color. I can make the display color of that hatch different. Let's choose orange or something like that. I don't like that. Let's try red, orange, something like that. But keep the display color dark gray. Okay. And you can do things like come in here on the extra thin layer and draw a piece of furniture, and here's another piece of furniture, and here's where the lockers are. You know, if you have those measurements, of course. All right, and then when I go here to floor plan, this is what they show up as. Sort of a nice thin line that's dark gray. So that way visually there's a hierarchy here. That's the goal when you're creating an architectural drawing, is a hierarchy of line weights, and visually there's some sort of superiority, like this poche is the biggest, boldest thing that you see when you look at this floor plan versus these little furniture pieces. That tells you what's more important in this drawing. That is versus what that is, right? Especially in this room, all the furniture is pretty arbitrary architecturally. Okay, any other questions?
So did you have for the windows and doors, did you have them thin or medium?
Did I have what?
For the windows and doors.
Uh-huh.
Did you have them thin or medium?
So the mullion or the frame of it, I have it on obviously on heavy, and then I probably left everything on default, if not. So let's go back to top view. Let's hide my heavy layer. Let's hide my hatch layer. So when I select all of these items here, I'm going to go to properties. I still have it on default. So let's put them on thin, change object layer, and then let's change the door panels themselves to be like on medium. So now if I turn those back on again, go to my floor plan, got all sorts of nice little line weights appearing, right? Anywhere where you're cutting through, right? A floor plan is a cut through a building at about 4 feet in height. So if you cut this whole entire space at 4 feet, that's what you would see in a floor plan. 4 feet is just the right height where you'll get most of your window openings, especially in a residential setting. If you have a big window there, it'll cut through that window and it'll show differently. So wherever you're cutting, you want that to be a nice thick line weight. Any other questions? All right, that's going to be your assignment for today. I'll post it up on Canvas. I'll take a screenshot of this whole thing to give you an idea of what you should be turning in. I just need the PDF. I don't want your Rhino file. I want the PDF. That's about it. All right, get to it.